welcome, and thank you for joining Happy Hour Holidays, your go-to podcast for business, entrepreneurship, and life stories. I'm your host, Manny Fresh, along with my co-host, Sean Fabre, and today in studio we got a special guest, Michael Pangburn. He has been doing chronic pain He's a chronic pain specialist. He's been doing it for 30 years. He also helps out with posture correction and overall performance in humans. The name of his business is Pangburn Methods. Why hurt? Call Michael Pangburn. Hey, Mike, great to have you, man. How's it going?
It's going great. Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely, man. We're really excited to have you on. Tell us a little bit about your background on how you got to doing chronic pain specialists and helping people overall relieve pain. Because we had Nate on here probably a couple weeks ago, and you helped him out significantly what he was going on. And man, it's just, for me, when I was talking to you off camera, it just seems like you just have a passion for this, and that's who we love to have on here. We love people with passion in what they do. So what inspired you to, get into this profession and help so many people?
I guess I've been really blessed by God to be in the position I'm in and to be alive. I've been through a lot, which has kind of led me to become very talented at rehabilitating the human body. I've been blessed to have really great parents that really emphasized education, the importance of it, and got a great education at Lynchburg College in exercise physiology, kinesiology, or human movement. I definitely love it. I have a blast every day going to work. I get to try to solve a lot of problems for people that modern medicine really was unable to help. So to answer your question, I got into it just by the way life goes, I guess. As a little kid, I was really injured, very crippled, started physical therapy like 3 years old, 4 years old the first time. I was in physical therapy for about 10 years, 3 days a week. More on than off. Both parents were in medicine, so they really hammered the importance of doing all the rehab exercises at home. It made a world of difference because my nickname as a kid was Peg Leg because I could never run right. Yeah, right?
Forrest Gump.
Absolutely. I got picked on all the time about called Forrest Gump, stuff like that, Forrest. And it really drove me because in high school, I stopped playing traditional sports like football, basketball, baseball, and as a joke, I signed up for the cross-country team. Me and my buddies laughed about it for 2 weeks. And they were like, you can't run. Your nickname's Peg Leg. You just ran the best mile of your life, cheating in 8th grade in 14 minutes and change. I was a center and nose tackle. We don't run miles, you know what I mean? So I didn't ever intend to go to practice. The coach calls halfway through the summer when I've completely forgotten about this at 6 o'clock in the morning and wakes my mother up because I didn't get to practice the day prior. It started at 6:30. She sent me in. I didn't have a choice. 2 weeks later, it was clear I was the fastest kid on the team. We were terrible. I didn't know that. It was a long adventure later, and I actually graduated the second fastest kid in school history in anything over a mile. So I ran a 4-minute and 28-second mile on an indoor track my junior year.
The 4-minute mile.
Well, I didn't go under it. That's the 4-minute mile. But for me growing up Peg Leg, it was pretty good.
Yeah, no. I mean, when we played soccer, they made us do 2 miles in under 12 minutes in order to make the team. So I know, when you get close to that 4 minute, I mean, you're talking about crazy fast. You're almost sprinting.
It seems that way until you get to college and you start competing with some of those guys in college and you're like, oh my Lord. I thought I was fast until I met them and then I got crushed. So
then did you long distance run in college as well?
I did, briefly. I was actually seated number 1 at the junior college national championship race, but I had the flu, 103-degree fever, and was just chugging NyQuil to even be able to breathe. So performance was not good.
You also were talking to us off camera that you compete in half Ironmans, correct? The 70.3, is that what it's called?
Yeah, 70.2, I think, but it's something there. I mean, it's 70.2 at Chase, 7.3. Every course isn't really measured perfectly. But yeah, I do. I try to compete in them. I'm going to attempt again this summer. It'll be the first time since I got hit by a truck 4 years ago and left for dead on the side of the road while cycling.
What's up with that story?
Oh, man. So you can't make this up. It was the day after my divorce finalized, and I'm training for a race.
So she hired the truck driver to hit you.
You would think, right? All my friends made that joke for sure. It wasn't her. She was very distraught. She was actually the second person there after the first person arrived. It was the only phone number I could remember was hers. It was a hell of concussion. I had to hold on to my skull. It was about 3 inches in diameter. The ambulance EMT workers said it looked like I got scalped by the pavement.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, very lucky to be alive. Very blessed to be here. I also punctured my Achilles tendon, which was formerly partially ruptured, about a 40% full thickness rupture. And I broke both feet, partially tore a couple muscles in my hips, and had a lot of road rash. And by the grace of God, I made it in and out of the hospital in 3 days and did all my own rehabilitation. Had some great wound care. Had an amazing trauma surgeon, probably saved my life. Thank you, Dr. Trop, if you're out there listening.
Dr. Trop, there you go.
Yeah, she's the best. To this day, most people would never guess looking at me. I've been really, really blessed to heal as well as I did. Never had plastic surgery. You can't really even see the head wound anymore, thank God.
You can't tell anything.
Yeah,
honestly.
I honestly can't tell. So exactly how did it occur? Were you riding down 19?
I was. Actually, I used to own a gym on 19, and I just closed it, going through the divorce, liquidated everything and whatnot. And I was working for a friend's gym, and I was cycling in and back 2 days a week just to get my mileage up because I didn't have a lot of downtime. And I just left work. It was about dusk. I've got lots of lights on my bike. I'm riding in the bike lane. And for the first time that I can remember, there was no traffic on US 19, either direction as far as I could look. Then a truck comes up. I've got the aftershocks headphones that let you hear everything because they transmit, instead of through your ear, through the bones of your cheek. I heard the truck. It seemed to be accelerating very quickly. And as I looked over my left shoulder, it was too late. He was making impact with my hip. I got knocked out when my head hit the windshield. Definitely heard the girl in the passenger scream a little bit with the windows down. And when I woke up, I had no clue how I got there. Everything was real fuzzy. It's the worst concussion of my life by far. It almost seemed like it was raining. I could only see about 6 feet, and I usually have killer vision.
You're talking about laying on the pavement.
I was in the grass.
Or in the grass.
I got launched. So when the truck hit me, the only witness that was several blocks away said they could see the bike lights and me just get launched when they heard the screeching of the brakes locking up on the truck. So I was really blessed to go over it, not under it.
Yeah, I know. Fuck.
Yeah.
It wasn't targeted then because you said there was barely any vehicles on the road. I mean,
no, it was really the only truck I could see, the only vehicle with headlights in either direction on the road, which is unusual for Newport Richey. It was about a block south of my gym right outside Kaiser College, which has since moved. There's no cameras around. I had a great relationship with the Newport Richey Police Department. We used to give them free memberships to my gym. It was kind of a rough area, so it was definitely a necessity.
it was a hit and run.
Yeah, hit run.
They ever find?
Never found him.
No.
I just thank God I still have all my limbs.
Yeah.
I know, right?
Like, it'd be great to get a payout or whatever, but God gave me the ability to work.
Or some justice. I mean, fuck.
Yeah, I'm sure in some form of karma, I probably had it coming. So.
Oh yeah.
Well, I know that truck driver is going to get a little bit of karma later on in life, or if he didn't already. I mean, we don't wish it upon anybody, but I mean,
fuck that. You hit and run. Yeah, get that karma, that bad karma. Fuck that.
Yeah, I think most likely in Newport Richey, in that part of town, there's a big drug problem. So there's probably
So
some
we're
form
on
of
19
impairment.
exactly. Is it north of 54?
Yes, north of 54. I was a block south of Main Street, US 19.
Okay.
Yep. So that's literally right at the intersection my gym was at, was Main Street and 19. So
I've done a lot of
familiar.
riding, and I rarely ever bike on the road because you're going with the flow of traffic, which means you really can't see behind you unless you have side mirrors, which I never had, right? Because I'm assuming you had a very high-end bike, right? Maybe carbon fiber, it probably weighed like 7 pounds, and you have it on, you're probably holding on the lower handles, right? You're not really cruising like this because most bikers don't. So I never really trusted the traffic coming from behind me. So I could never, ever by myself ride on the road. The only time I ever did is in line with other bikers because drafting is the best thing ever invented, in my opinion, because it makes riding so much more easy. I know you said you were trying to get your mileage up, but that probably wasn't the first occurrence of a accident where an accident could have happened, right? You were probably riding and sometimes maybe got swiped by a mirror or something like that.
For sure. I've had a lot of close calls. I've actually had a lot of friends that own bike shops, and they've told me I shouldn't ride on the road because you're going to get hit eventually. And I think statistically, it's like one accident every like 5,000 miles.
It's supposed to be very low, yeah.
And I'm probably up there around 30,000 before I got hit. So I usually am very hyper vigilant at paying attention all the way around. I don't know what was different that night, but I mean, I've jumped up on curbs on my road bike, just literally jumped on the bike, feeder clipped in, the bike goes with you, right?
Yeah.
And just jumped up and absolutely lost a bunch of skin because they're not really meant for jumping over curbs and onto grass.
Yeah.
And then you laying on the sidewalk, but it's better than getting hit by a car.
Yeah. Man, that's a tense story right there.
Yeah. I guess I was really lucky.
So you were in and out of the hospital in 3 days, which is remarkable considering you said that you had a 3-inch where you were holding your skull.
It's right here. It was about that big around. Yeah, I can send you guys the pictures.
Oh my God, can't even see it.
Yeah, that's pretty much gone now. They told me they thought the hair would eventually go
actually,
back.
now I do see
So
it.
I've got a little bit of a flat spot left, but it's down to about the size of a quarter.
So was it a gaping hole where your brain was exposed?
No, it didn't break the skull. Apparently, I'm really hard-headed. Thank God.
You also mentioned, I mean, we're talking about injury here. You also mentioned that you had like 50 broken bones throughout your entire life.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was diagnosed with osteopenia at 17.
What is that?
It's a stage before osteoporosis in bone degeneration. So there's a lot of factors that most Americans aren't familiar with that do play a role in osteopenia. One is caffeine intake. If you take in caffeine, it blocks all of your nutritional calcium absorption for about 3 to 4 hours.
Is there any
has
caffeine
to
in there?
bind
No.
with calcium for your kidneys to be able to filter it out. So if you take in caffeine throughout the day, like most soda drinkers do, drink soda all day long, which wasn't me, thank God, it will absolutely deplete your bone density over your lifetime, and you'll be much more likely to get injured and have bone breaks later in life.
So for all you people out there sucking up coffee, maybe pump the brakes a little bit, right?
Yeah, the coffee people, honestly, from all the people I talk to, tend to drink coffee once to twice a day. It's the Pepsi-holics, the Coca-holics, that are literally sipping on soda from the time they get out of bed to the time they go to sleep at night that tend to get it the worst.
Oh, wow.
But I digressed. I was running. I had shin splints, what I thought was shin splints. My father's a brilliant medical practitioner. He thought they were shin splints. And I would ice my legs in trash cans full of ice water after running every day for about 6 months. And then about an hour later, I'd start limping. And so finally, I went to the doctor to get it checked out. When you have one at home, you don't really necessarily run right to the doctor.
Right.
So when we did an x-ray of my tibias, it turned out that I had 44 stress fractures in my tibias, over a dozen that were active in each leg, and a dozen that had already healed. Oh, wow. So, yeah.
What would they do to treat that?
They just had me take 6 months off from running and had me take calcium with vitamin D3 and magnesium. So Citracal was one of the supplements they put me on right away. I really wasn't too open-minded to pharmaceuticals. So anything natural I was more of a fan of. My dad was pretty obese, and for breakfast every morning, by the time I was born, had a cup of coffee with cream and a fistful of prescription pills every day for breakfast.
Damn.
So that didn't seem very healthy to me. So I decided I better go a different way with what I was putting in my mouth.
Mike, how old are you?
I'm 40.
40? Okay.
Yep.
Man, to break so many bones by the time you're 40, get into an accident. I mean, you've experienced a lot of injury and trauma, I would say.
I guess, yeah. I tore my labrum in college trying to transition from distance running to throwing shot put. I was a weightlifter through high school, not competitively. Like, we didn't have a team, but I started weightlifting before I started running. And so by the time I was at Lynchburg, I was stronger than all the throwers in upper body movements in the weight room and most of the lower body movements. I didn't realize it took a lot of coordination I didn't have to throw a shot put, but I was reasonably successful at it before the injury.
What's the furthest you ever threw it?
I was like 38 feet, I think.
Is that good or bad?
I
or-
mean, for somebody that's been doing it a month, I guess it was pretty good. The throwers were pretty jacked up.
Yeah. And then you have to do the spinning with the ball on your neck and just.
Yep, absolutely.
So the whole 9 yards, huh?
It was a change of pace for sure versus distance running.
Having experienced all that, how do you keep such a positive mentality throughout? Because we just met you and it seems like you're super positive.
Oh, I mean, I've been able to overcome it. So I was told I was going to need shoulder surgery by an orthopedic surgeon right after that injury. I luckily am a Jets fan, and I say that in a hard way after last night's game. But at the time, Chad Pennington was our quarterback, and he already had suffered a similar injury and had 2 surgeries to fix it and was still throwing a football. And this orthopedic surgeon tried to tell me I'd never bench press or throw anything ever again. So I was just like, you're an idiot. So I told him I wasn't having surgery. I asked him if I could just go to physical therapy, what the outcomes would be like either way. And when he told me that if I had surgery and went to physical therapy, I'd never bench or throw again. And if I just went to physical therapy, I'd never bench or throw again. I would be more likely to re-injure the shoulder, would be the only difference. I'm like, you're not opening my shoulder. No way. What's the benefit? Lower likelihood of re-injury in the future if I lose self-discipline and don't keep up the strengthening program?
Yeah.
No thanks. I was in college for exercise physiology at the time. Luckily, I was a pretty good student, so I knew I could progress the exercise program that physical therapy would teach me. I'd spent 10 years in it as a kid. And so it was a situation I was used to, and I'd overcome a lot of injuries by that point in my life. So, you know, in the long run, it's worked out really well. My right shoulder is actually better than my uninjured shoulder today.
Yeah.
I have video of me doing one-arm push-ups with my right hand in a gymnastic ring suspended 6 inches off the ground with my left foot on the ground and my left arm and right leg in the air.
Holy cow.
And so my right shoulder, I'm a little over 200 pounds. So my right shoulder would definitely hold up to me bench pressing, 225 for reps, no issue.
Yeah.
Man, well, have you ever done a one-handed push-up?
Man, I don't think so.
I don't think that's not just one-handed. That's one-handed, one-footed.
In a really unstable environment. So you have to have great rotational chain strength, which nobody knows how to train in America. It's great.
So when you were doing the rehab for your shoulder, was it lifting weights or was it stretching exercises? Or
Well, it started out with the physical therapist, Josh Kurlan in Geneva, New York. Thanks, Josh. And, he got me back to the point where I could move a 45-pound bar off my chest without my shoulder feeling like it was going to dislocate. But we did that with a body blade, which is like a long, thin piece of plastic with a hand grip in the middle, and you shake it with your arm fully extended, and it creates instability in the shoulder joint. And the purpose of rotator cuff muscles, other than rotating the head of the humerus in the shoulder socket, is to create stability in the joint while you're transferring force through it. Just like hydraulics work in heavy machinery, the rotating hydraulics end up absorbing the impact if there's ever impact on that equipment. It's what breaks down first.
No, you keep it going.
With that said, we did a lot of rotator cuff strengthening movements, rubber band movements, a lot of deep massage. The massage was very painful. It was the first pain I'd ever felt in my life where I felt like I couldn't breathe. That wasn't the last time, for sure. But it got better. Every time I went to physical therapy, I felt a little bit better afterwards. Not much, and I always was able to go back to playing sports and doing things I wanted to do.
Yeah, it's 23 seconds left.
Okay. We'll get right back to Mike real quick with that story, and then we'll also talk about common causes of chronic pain and how you approach diagnosing them. Like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you for listening to Happy Hour Holidays. Welcome back to Happy Hour Holidays, and thank you for tuning in. If you're looking to be on the show, please look at our Facebook, Instagram page, and reach out to see if we could get you on. And we always look for business, entrepreneurship, and life stories. We love it. Like, comment, and subscribe. And going back to Mike now, we have Mike in studio. He's a chronic pain specialist, among other things. Mike, going back to the story that we were kind of talking at hand, We were kind of in your college years, I think, going into it. Continue with that story, man. I know the audience is hooked right now.
So we talked about me doing some shoulder rehab with a physical therapist named Josh Kurlan. It went really well. I got out of physical therapy, able to move a bar off my chest. And he told me right away that I'd be able to do better with dumbbells because I could change my hand position, which makes a lot more sense to me today than it did as a sophomore in college, but junior in college, I guess. But at any rate, I was able to progress the program. I always had a fair amount of pain. If I went back to like a flat bench, my shoulder would dislocate overnight in my sleep. I'd have to pop it back in. I'd get a lot of numbness down in my hands. You wake up, can't really feel your fingers. Again, luckily, born in a medical family, so I was pretty familiar with how to fix these things. My dad could show me once. I could fix it myself after that.
So you would dislocate your shoulder?
I would subluxate and dislocate. Yeah, I'm a side sleeper.
So did that mean that you have to like? I've seen this in movies. I don't know if it's true.
You swing it around, yeah.
But some people hit it into
it doesn't work like that.
Oh, okay.
I tried that. It does not work. I tried that first. Then after being shown how to put a dislocated shoulder back in place by my dad, you spin it around over the shoulder like that.
So it's forward to backwards?
That's the best way to go for sure.
Yeah.
Forward to backwards, it's going to pop right back in. And
you heard it here first, folks. Don't slam your shoulder into a wall.
No, you're not going to do yourself any favors. You might rupture your bicep, but that won't help in the long run. So after that, I took the rehab to the gym and started to progress the movements. I kind of understood what I needed to do with adding instability and working on rotation of the shoulder joint against resistance. So definitely took it to weights, started using some dumbbells, started doing more body weight movements. It definitely worked well. I got back to bench pressing, I guess, after I re-injured the shoulder again 6 years later. Before that, I would just do pec flies and like dumbbell press. But every time I'd pay the price if I used a flat bar. When I fell playing with my border collie, re-injured it 6 years later, I rehabbed it entirely myself with what I had available in the gym. Luckily, I'd owned a personal training business at that point in my life for a few years. I was a former world record holder in personal training sales for Bally Total Fitness when we were the biggest fitness corporation in the world.
What was the number?
I did $28,872 in sales in 18 days.
18 days?
In Rochester, New York, yeah.
Holy shit. How much was a membership?
I have no clue. I had nothing to do with membership sales.
Oh, well,
personal training.
Just personal training.
Oh, personal training.
Yeah.
How much was an hour?
Typical hours are about $70.
$70?
Yeah.
Damn, so you were doing, what was that, 4,000 clients?
No, you sold packages.
Oh, okay.
So you'd sell like 48 packs of sessions. A lot of times Bally's would give you a couple free sessions if they paid for it in full.
Yeah.
Added on, you still got paid. I mean,
did you get all of it or?
No, not even close.
Oh,
not even close.
So Bally's was happy. And you're like, what the fuck, man?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not complaining. I was doing fine.
Yeah.
It was my boss's record. He pissed me off one day. And I decided that I was going to hit him where it hurt and just take from him. The only thing that really mattered to him, his bragging point, was always that he held the record for greatest sales in that club ever. I didn't know it was a global record for the biggest corporation in fitness on the planet.
Oh, so that when you say world record, you mean world record?
Yeah, they were an international corporation at the time. Yep, huge gym chain. Completely gone today. They sold off a lot of gyms, closed a lot of gyms. They had a tremendous amount of debt that they were a little upside down on for sure.
Yeah, I think the last Bally's I saw was off of Hillsborough and Dale Mabry.
Yeah, and when I moved to Tampa, I gave my boss my 2 weeks notice at Bally's, and he told me that I was nuts. People like me don't quit. Looked at me like I was crazy, and I was like, what do you mean people like me don't quit? I can quit. Got every right everybody else does. Why can't I quit?
How old were you around this time?
I moved to Florida when I was 26.
Oh, okay.
Yep, and so he's like, give me 5 minutes. I'm going to go make a couple calls. Where are you moving to? I said, I'm moving to Tampa. He goes, we have 3 gyms in Tampa. Let me go make some calls. I'll come back to you with some options. So he comes back to me 5 minutes later and he goes, Mike, we're going to give you 6 months to relocate and you can take over the training department of any gym in Tampa that we own. There's one on Dale Mabry, North Dale Mabry. There's one on Hillsborough and there's one on Olmerton Road in Clearwater. We're going to give you 6 months to get relocated, set up, check out the gyms. The GMs have been told that you can use any gym you want. Please do not tell anyone why you're there.
What do you mean, don't tell anybody why you're there?
They didn't want me to interrupt the flow of the personal training departments. So like if I'm there to take over the training department and just figure out,
don't tell them.
don't tell the trainers that I might be taking over your boss's job. And your boss might not be real happy about it either.
And you were taking over that department for all three of them,
just for one gym,
just for
whichever one
yeah.
you chose.
Yeah.
Right, whichever one I wanted.
And I'm gonna guess the one you chose, Olmerton.
I chose to open my own personal training business.
Fuck you!
It's like, fuck you, Balance.
Absolutely. I was blessed with the opportunity to do that in a 50,000 square foot gym in Newport Richey.
Holy shit!
Called Core Fitness. All the training staff had to work for me. It went pretty well. I met a doctor there named Dr. Bain. And with him, I was able to start the first children's fitness and weight loss program to get covered by every major health insurance provider in a pediatrics office setting nationwide.
And by that, what you're saying is obese children or?
Obese, underweight, kids with all kinds of psychological and health complications that we would fix through diet and exercise. So if your kids had type 2 diabetes, if they had anxiety, pain problems, depression, if they were overweight or obese, and we had a litany of things. High triglycerides are pretty common in kids before the cholesterol levels get up. It's all stuff that you can fix with diet and exercise.
Did you have to pay Core Gym a percentage of whatever you were bringing in?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. And that's typical how it works.
What is the percentage? How about?
Well, I'm not there anymore, but at the time I got 70-30, which felt pretty good.
Sounds fair.
When I left there 2 years later, went to Anytime Fitness, I got 80-20 with the understanding that the first month I did 20,000 in cash to the club sales, I'd get 85% for the future. They thought it was impossible, so they agreed. Yeah.
And you're like, do you know who I am?
Actually, right. And actually, I gave one of the best closes ever to these people. I told them a great analogy. So there are two brothers that owned it, John and Dave Vaina. John actually owned it. Dave ran it a lot for John, which was a catastrophic mistake. But John and I had already basically agreed to terms. And Dave's sitting there to read over the contract. And he goes, Mike, in the years we've been open, we've had 20 trainers in here. They get a 50-50 split, and we've never gotten $100 off any trainer in all the years we've been open at this location.
Bad trainers, then.
What's the difference between you and those ones? And I said, well, Dave, I'm going to give you a great story of the difference. I want you to pretend that there is no place to go out to eat in Newport Richey and that you don't know how to prepare food. It's not in your wheelhouse. You cannot do this. It's not an option. So every day you drive to work, you got to go out to lunch. There's only two places to go. They both sell a sandwich. One sandwich. It's the only thing on the menu. They're different sandwiches. One store you go to, every time you go, that sandwich is the best sandwich you've ever eaten in your life. It never gets old, but it's $20 a sandwich. And you don't even get a side or a drink with it. He goes, okay, that sounds good. I'm excited about that. What's the other place like? I said, Dave, I didn't tell you about the other place, but I will. But the most important thing to you is that the sandwich at the other place is $1. And he goes, oh, I'm going to eat there every day. Unless I have a really good day, and then I'm going to go to the other place, and I'm going to buy myself a $20 sandwich and treat myself. I said, I understand. Now, the information I didn't give you about the Dollars place is that when you walk in there, there's dust on the walls, and there's one guy who looks a little, like cleanliness doesn't matter to him, standing behind the counter with a loaf of Wonder Bread. And you walk up and you give him your $1, and he pulls out one slice of Wonder Bread, drops his drawers, and takes a dump right on the Wonder Bread, folds it in half, puts it on a plate, and gives it back to you.
Oh, my God.
Now, what are you going to do? He goes, I'm going to buy a $20 sandwich every day. And I said, that's right, Dave. Those other trainers in here were serving shit sandwiches, and everybody knew it.
Oh, man. I'm taking that one.
I know. Yeah, that's a good fucking... Yeah. Did you make that up? Or?
I did. I made it up on the fly.
Oh, shit. That's hilarious.
I mean, it worked.
Yeah. So then you start working at Core Gym. You're selling the $20 sandwich, not the shit sandwich, right?
No, but
Isn't that what you were talking about?
No, going into the contract, right? It was part of the contract.
Oh, yeah, part of the contract.
Yeah, because you looked at the contract, and then you gave him that analogy, and then what happened?
So then he agreed that when I did 20,000 in sales, I could get 85-15, because he goes, it's never going to happen.
Permanently, right?
Permanently, right. And because I was selling, $50 to $70 an hour personal training sessions in Newport Richey back then, and everybody else was selling $20 and $25 personal training sessions, and they couldn't sell those. But if your skills are not adequate enough for you to convey to your potential customer why you are of importance to them, if they don't think you know more about fitness and trying to accomplish their goals than they do, they're not going to hire you. It's clear. Well, when I talk to your doctor, what your doctor figures out real quick is I know more about how his body works in the gym than he does. Every time.
Is that because of the topic you studied in college?
For sure. I mean, I have a degree in human movement with an emphasis on exercise physiology. So, like if I stayed in Virginia, most of the people I graduated with that stay there work in cardiac rehab. Others run personal training departments and gyms, have their own personal training and human performance businesses. My life experience is really what's led me to be able to do my occupation. So when we started, you guys asked me how I got into this. So when I was doing personal training in Newport Richey, it was a really older population in the gym. It's very senior citizen dominant area.
Is it closer to Holiday?
It's just north of Holiday.
Okay.
It shares a border with Holiday.
Because
So
you were
then it's
saying
Hudson.
Holidays, where you were touching on, that's not the area there. There's a lot of people that do a lot of drug use there.
A lot of drugs, a lot of drugs, a lot of alcoholism.
Was it Hudson then?
Hudson's just north of Port Richey.
Yeah, Port Richey.
Oh, okay.
So they're all kind of one metropolis that grows into each other. But at any rate, I started working in the facility, Core Fitness in Newport Richey, and for the first time in my life, 60% of the people in the gym or more had gray hair. That was weird. So I knew I had to develop programs that would appeal to that population. They don't really care about losing weight. They don't really care about getting big muscles. They just want to not fall down and get injured and be able to live a decent quality of life. So I started training a lot of older adults, and a lot of them had injuries, and they were already going to physical therapy, or they had already gone to physical therapy and the injuries did not get better. Some of them had had orthopedic surgery. The pain still didn't go away. So when I noticed a few of them had the same pain as they would describe it to me, doing the same movements from that movements I experienced the same pain on when I was younger, I realized that I could just put them through probably the same physical therapy program I went through as a kid when you only had to have a bachelor's degree to practice physical therapy. And if it worked for me, it would probably work for them. And by the grace of God, it worked 100% of the time. For the first 7 years. I went 7 years without seeing a person with an injury I couldn't fix.
Was insurance at all covering any of it?
Never. Insurance doesn't cover anything I do. And here's the kicker.
I thought you said that you started that child program that
that did. But I'm not doing that anymore. Unfortunately,
Yeah.
Dr. Bain passed away. I spent about 4 years trying to perpetuate the Children's Fitness Weight Loss Program. It was very successful. You can look it up. It was called Babies and Beyond. It took place in Spring Hill, Florida. I still have a lot of friends that are now adults that were children from that, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, that's neat.
But
showing your age, man.
Yeah, I know. We all get there though, right? Father Time's undefeated. So, I'm seeing people with knee problems. I'm seeing people with foot problems. I'm seeing people with shoulder problems in the gym. And instead of just helping them lose weight and get big and just kind of learn how to work around the injury, I started taking a crack at fixing them. In the late 90s, mid to late 90s, physical therapy went from requiring a bachelor's degree in America to practice physical therapy to requiring a master's degree. And what most people don't know is when that happened, what changed was more regulation by insurance companies. You didn't really learn about how to fix more injuries getting a master's degree. You learned how to be a better employee for the insurance companies that were really your employer. And for the insurance companies, what they really wanted to do is make more money because they have shareholders.
Yeah.
My dad growing up with my dad in medicine, he would complain all the time when effective treatments were no longer covered by insurance, especially at the VA hospital where he worked because he was a veteran. He really felt like we were cheating our veterans out of the best quality service.
Which I agree with.
So do I, wholeheartedly. And that's why I don't compromise. So sadly, as more education's been required to practice physical therapy, the therapists have become tremendously less effective because they are more regulated by insurance companies that care more about profits than they do about you getting better. So a lot of the treatments that worked for me as a kid in the 80s and early 90s are no longer covered. The signs on the walls at every physical therapy practice I went to, the big signs that said no pain, no gain, Those aren't in physical therapy practices anymore. As soon as you start saying it hurts, they back off. That's not how it was when I was a kid at all.
So if you feel pain, it means it's working, or?
Pain is your body's natural communication system. It's the one thing every human being in history has shared, is the ability to feel pain. But every pain isn't the same. When you scrape your knees, it doesn't feel the same pain as when you break a bone. You know, when you burn yourself, it doesn't feel like when you freeze your finger. These are different sensations. In America, we're taught to run from pain. In the East, where yoga is practiced predominantly, very wide throughout
Talking
the
about
culture.
like India and
Asia,
yeah.
China, Japan, where martial arts are more predominant. People fix a lot of these chronic pain problems most Americans go through every day just from stretching and strengthening movements. And so the majority of the visits people are going to the doctor for knee pain, foot pain, ankle pain, shoulder pain, neck pain, balance problems, my knee buckles when I walk, it's all fraud. It's a big scam to take your money in large quantities and make it somebody else's money.
What would you suggest that people do in America then?
I think it would be a great idea to come see me at the office. I offer one complimentary visit to every new client, so we can put one free treatment together.
Dude, you don't sound like a chronic pain manager. You sound like a physical therapist that knows what exactly he's doing, as opposed to the ones that don't.
I'm not a physical therapist.
You can't be, because you said you need a MD.
Well, you need a DPT, a doctorate of physical therapy. But, I had a guy that's called a physiatrist. Fewer people in America are familiar with a physiatrist. They write the exercise programs that doctors of physical therapy implement in hospitals. Doctors of physical therapy are not allowed to diagnose problems, so they don't develop treatments. They do what they are told. They are grocery store baggers. There are people that can be very passionate about being a grocery store bagger because they get paid well, and there are people that cannot. In any occupation, there's people that are great, and there's people that are average. And there's people that just really don't care. They're just showing up for the paycheck.
Yeah.
Healthcare is no different. So I always tell people the difference between me and a physical therapist is a physical therapist shows up to work to get paid, and I come to compete against your injuries and get you better.
That's
and if you look up my reviews, it shows.
Yeah.
Sure. I mean, I've got a lot of amazing people I've been able to work with. I've been very blessed, but I've helped several people return to walking that were told by multiple doctors they'd never walk again. My buddy Curtis Welch couldn't feel or move his left leg for 11 years, had a spinal cord stimulator implanted, and within 6 months, we were able to get him off 22 prescription drugs a day.
Mike, hold that thought, because when we come back, please like, comment, and subscribe. We will continue this story.
And we're back to Happy Hour Holidays here with Michael Pangburn. Here's his card. Just so you guys see it. And you can, his Instagram and his Facebook is Pangburn Methods. Instagram is Pangburn Methods, and then Facebook is Pangburn Methods P3. So check him out. He relieves pain in a different way than the traditional insurance fucking fueled bullshit that they have out there. So you guys know. So Mike, going back to the story that you were talking about before we had to go to break, we were talking a little bit more about how you were different and how physical therapy has changed over time.
And the patients that you had helped, I think that's where we left off, right?
Sure. So we were talking about my buddy Curtis Welch, I think. And Curtis had a situation called chronic chronic regional pain syndrome.
For the people out there that don't know, what is that?
Chronic regional pain syndrome is basically, to dumb it down, nerve death down the leg. It's diagnosed by putting someone in a dark room and taking an infrared photo, and you see the lack of blood flow to the leg that comes from lack of innervation. So his wife told me you could literally stick a steak knife in his thigh, and if he wasn't looking, he wouldn't know it.
No way.
So he would limp to the bathroom with a walker, hopping basically on one foot, dragging the other leg when he needed to use a toilet because he couldn't take his wheelchair all the way into the bathroom because the door was too small. And Curtis went into the wheelchair at 6'5" and 185 pounds. Kurt came out of the wheelchair at 6'5" and 365 pounds.
Oh, wow.
So we had to do a lot of unique strength and conditioning. I used gymnastic rings for him to hold on to that it could adjust in height. So he grabbed onto him the first time that I had him stand up from the wheelchair with his arms. And that way he could use that for support. And we would start working on doing squats, really trying to push with that leg coming up after he regained the ability to move it. So
how's he doing now?
He still walks. I actually work.
Is he still 300?
He's still a big guy.
Yeah.
Still a big guy for sure. I have been blessed to work with his sister-in-law, who unfortunately suffered a cervical spinal cord injury a few years later after I got Kurt back to walking, driving, hunting, fishing, regular life again.
This is in Florida.
Yep, this was in Newport Richey. Yeah. I still see Doreen. She's a good friend of mine. I see her Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at noon. She's very, very popular at the gym over at Tampa Family Fitness. I have an office in the back right off the dojo. And so she's made tremendous progress. She, when we first started, couldn't move her fingers. She was discharged from inpatient physical therapy. She could barely move her head. It was about like this was her range of motion of her head. She could shrug her shoulders about 1.5 inches. Her right elbow bent maybe 10 degrees. And her right index finger quivered like this.
So what exactly is a cervical spinal injury?
So if you have a spinal cord injury in your cervical spinal cord, that's in your neck.
Oh, okay.
And so she was really never supposed to move well again from the chest down. They didn't tell her she'd never walk again. They told her there was about a 5% chance, I think, if I remember right. And she still doesn't. To this day, it's been 9 years, maybe 10 now. It's been a while. But we've made consistent progress. She actually just put some bead art together for me. I mounted on my wall of a photo of me and my dogs a couple weeks ago that one of my other cervical spinal cord injury patients and partial quadriplegics who does walk was blown away that she had that much hand dexterity that she could do that.
If people have lower back spinal pain, that's not considered cervical spinal cord injury.
No,
right?
A spinal cord injury is completely different. Usually you never overcome them. There's a lot of great new technology out that basically look like mech suits. If you're familiar with what that was like back in the 90s, a mech warrior was a video game. And so a person was in like a big robot, basically. So it's a big mechanical suit that you can get into. They're, I don't know, probably $500,000. So big hospitals have access to them. But they really do help spinal cord injury patients regain movement.
But for the lower back, I mean, what do you normally do for
lower
those
back pain's a
patients?
joke, man. Sciatica, I can fix in an hour.
Really?
People that come in with sciatica for 20 plus years come in, and the number one cause of lower back pain and sciatica in America is a tight piriformis muscle. It's a muscle of your hip underneath your butt. It rotates the femur, and the sciatic nerve goes right underneath it. So muscles are impermeable to fluids. Because of the epimysium, which is the outermost layer of connective tissue covering the muscle. So the fluids that go in and out of the muscle go through tubules, like blood vessels, as well as lymphatic drainage tubules. The primary difference between the two is that blood vessels have thicker cell walls, and they're muscular, so they don't collapse going through the epimysium, even if there's pressure applied to it. So lymph tubules are different. They have zero resting pressure, and it wouldn't support any structure to those walls. So as soon as the epimysium puts more pressure on those vessels, essentially your lymphatic drainage tubules, it will cut off all of its ability to take fluid out of the muscle. So if you can imagine a muscle and kind of liken it to a water balloon, as you stretch an empty water balloon, it stretches fine. And you can pull it out pretty far, maybe about a foot. You can pull one end from the other. But if you fill the water balloon, it's never going to be a foot long. It's going to shrink from there because as it gets thicker, it gets shorter. Muscles are the same. Okay, so if you have a swollen muscle or you have the pump from working out, the muscle thickens for a little while as it's gorged with blood and inflammation.
And lactic acid, right?
And lactic and carbonic acid that hold the muscle in a swollen and shortened state. So when you're a kid and you're healthy and you're moving well, these muscles drain really, really well. As you get older...
Through the lymphatic tubules.
Through the lymphatic drainage system, right.
Yeah.
So as you get older, or if you get injured or have scar tissue or you have bones that are misaligned, which most American adults do because we sit more than any other society in the world, which isn't good for our structure.
No.
At all.
Especially with the phones, too.
Doing this.
Oh, it's all terrible. TechNet, we can fix that, too, for you pretty quick. Just ask Nate Jurowitz.
Yeah.
Yeah. So...
you came up with a therapy to open up those tubules in order for the drainage to occur?
Sure, I wasn't the first one, but with what I do with the foot, I might have been. It's definitely a proprietary technique that I use there to flush the swelling out of the muscles at the bottom of the foot, realign the bones of the foot, and take strain off the knees, hips, and lower back through that. When the arch of the foot collapses, the ankle's a rotational chain joint, so then it can't move well. It certainly can't rotate as well once the arch of the foot collapses, which happens in soccer players and fighters all the time because you're on the balls of your feet constantly in those two sports. And so after that, the hip joint is the next rotational chain joint up the kinetic chain. In Kinesiology 101, they teach us that you have to trace a muscular imbalance profile to its lowest point in the kinetic chain and correct it there. So there's nothing lower than the foot. So once the muscles lock up in the foot and disengage when they're swollen and just dislocate the bones of the foot and the arch, the muscles that support the hip and rotate it, like the piriformis, have to work more than they did before because they have to make up for the rotation that the ankle can't. The knee is not a rotational joint. It's a linear joint like your elbow. So if you have foot and ankle problems, over time, it's going to cause hip problems. If you have wrist mobility problems, over time, it's going to cause shoulder or elbow problems because the elbow doesn't rotate and the shoulder does. So the muscles work together of a plane of motion in your body. There's 3 planes of motion. I'm not going to give you the kinesiology terminology because nobody will understand it. But basically, you have muscles that move things forward and backwards, laterally and together, out to the side and up over your head and then down. Same with your legs. And muscles that rotate. The muscles that rotate start in the bottom of your foot. There's another connective tissue called fascia, which surrounds muscles and has fibers that weave through the muscles. They only weave through the same muscles of a plane of motion. So the fascia that is part of a chain, right, that connects all the muscles of the rotational chain from your foot up your body ends in the base of your tongue. And so when I can release a knot in that fascia chain, it allows your bones to move back into anatomical position where they're supposed to be. That allows for more drainage, easier lymphatic drainage from those muscles so they don't stay swollen. And we take pressure off nerves, so then the pain goes away.
Why is it that everything goes to the base of the tongue then?
It's just the rotational chain fascia that connects up there. I'm not really sure why it ends there, other than that there's not much rotation above that.
So you're talking about ankles, you're talking about shoulders and hips, right?
Feet, the muscles go from the bottom of the foot, right into, to be more specific, your peroneus longus and brevis and your flexor digitorum longus underneath your calf muscles.
Yeah, let me write that one down.
Right.
I understand. I understand.
So then they go from there up into your groin muscles. And when the groin muscles get tight, you are likely to develop what's called internal femoral impingement syndrome, which means your femur rotates inwards and stays there, which cuts off blood flow down the leg, pulls the piriformis as well as the other 3 rotational muscles of the posterior side of the hip into an elongated state versus where they should be, making them do a lot more work in a disadvantaged circumstance than they were supposed to be.
I think that's what I got right now.
So then they overwork and swell. That's exactly what you've got right now.
Because I'm feeling the groin. I'm like, it started off like ankle, now it's gone up, and now it's in the groin.
Yeah, I can poke on these muscles, and the lightest pressure like this is going to hurt. Like I'm sticking 100 pounds of pressure into you, or like a knife.
Essentially, what you're doing is you're rehabbing the muscle, right?
You're fixing the soft tissue. And on that point, I was just reading a medical research study last week, actually, because I'm kind of a science nerd. That's what I do. PubMed.gov is my thing. And it's the United States Medical Research Directory online. For those of you that don't know at home, it's available to everybody that can read medical research. It's great. I was on there, and there was a study that was published where by stopping aging in the soft tissue of mice and lab rats, they effectively stopped aging in mice and lab rats. And the scientists hypothesized that within 10 years, we'll be able to stop human aging by stopping muscular aging.
But still, you have to look at the decay of cells, right?
So what actually happens over time is you have on your chromosomes something called a telomere, which at the ends of your chromosomes, which is really your DNA structure, right? They're like little hairs or fingers that protrude from the chromosomes. And upon replication over time, the telomeres shorten. One of the things that they've just proven in science is actually the more green space exposure you have, the less your telomeres shorten.
What do you mean by green space?
So if you go out in the park, you go out on
okay.
boating, the
Yeah.
more time you're spending out in nature, the less your telomere length reduces. There's a litany of healthcare injuries and diseases that correlate with poor DNA quality. So basically, the specificity of your genetics as you age diminishes as the DNA quality and the telomere length break down.
Holy shit, man. But they're saying within 10 years they'd be able to stop aging.
To stop human aging altogether.
Does that actually sound something that is feasible, that the big pharma companies would allow, that big insurance companies would allow?
So I would imagine at first, yes, because the money they will make will be outrageous because it will only be available to billionaires, millionaires and billionaires at first. And, once they prove that it works, which just from looking at American celebrities, I would guess they are getting closer to. Because these people, in Hollywood put all kinds of money.
Like Jennifer Aniston,
and
Jennifer
some of them
Lopez,
are ageless.
man.
Cindy Crawford.
Yeah,
Cindy Crawford, when I was a kid,
she looks like
she was gorgeous.
fucking...
Now she still looks like she's like 30.
She
It's
does.
unreal.
No way.
She's 20 years older than me.
She does. She does. She still is one of the people.
And so, there's people out there that definitely know some secrets. But I'm telling you, exercise, daily hydration, and maintaining flexibility will maintain a much better quality of life, free from diseases, injuries, and balance problems than you can even imagine.
So then you probably practice yoga
Every day.
every single day?
I wake up almost crippled when it's cold like this, yeah. So from all the injuries, fascia chains tightening. So I spend about 90 minutes every morning rolling things out on lacrosse balls, muscles out on lacrosse balls with a rubber band, pulling them into an extended position to help flush the fluid faster. Does hurt like hell.
Wait, say that again, on lacrosse balls?
Yeah, like a lacrosse ball.
Yeah.
You familiar?
Yeah.
So, you could use a cue ball. It would be a little less forgiving. But I use a foam roller too, a dense foam roller. Definitely helps.
Which is usually cylindrical, correct?
Foam roller is.
Yeah, the foam roller.
For
so
sure.
Where are you putting the lacrosse balls at exactly?
The
Are you just
first thing I
rolling it
roll out-
across?
No. The first thing I do is I stand on a lacrosse ball to elongate the muscles of the bottom
Stand
of my
on
foot.
it.
With one foot, lifting up on my toes with the other foot.
So your balance is immaculate.
Well, I'm holding on to like a kitchen counter when I do it, if you would. So more for balance. But when I put my 200 pounds on that muscle, it forces the internal pressure of the muscle to become higher than the resistance externally on the lymphatic drainage tubules. Because I'm pulling the muscle into an elongated state. I'm trying to lift the toes. I'm forcing it to go farther than it wants to with my other foot, which pulls the muscles in the bottom of the foot tense against the bottom of the foot. So when my 200 pounds comes down on that lacrosse ball and I maintain that position and I don't let the foot flex down like it wants to because of the pain, it actually realigns my back. My hip will release, and then afterwards I pull all my toes back into place.
How do you know that your hip releases? Is it something
you
you
feel?
feel?
It pops.
Yeah.
You can hear it.
So it's something that
It's like a spinal adjustment.
audience members can do, right?
Potentially, yeah. I can teach you to do it easy. It hurts.
In terms of, you mentioned chiropractors. Does that shit really work? I'm
So,
skeptical
all right, so
about
here
it so bad because every person that's ever been to a chiropractor never gets better.
No, that's not true. That's not true at all.
From what
now,
I've noticed.
what I will say is chiropractic's a system, right? And there are good ones, and there are bad ones, and there are ones in between. I know a great one. Shout out to Mike Saviano in Newport Richie on Little Road.
What's up, Mike?
He is the best. Mike is amazing. I have a practice in Tampa. I still haven't found anybody as good to send to down here in Tampa. Mike really is.
Wait, I thought your last name was Pangburn.
It is. But I don't like to adjust necks.
Yeah.
I adjusted my sister's neck after 3 chiros couldn't, 3 days in a row. And by the grace of God, it worked and she wasn't paralyzed. But I try not to adjust necks.
Grace of God. So you kind of know what you were doing when you were doing.
Yes.
It's like, hey sis.
No. I mean, this was definitely. I had a good feeling she was going to be fine. So did she. It's not something I generally do. Yeah. If you have neck problems, I can make your neck problems a lot better. But I'm going to treat the soft tissue there, and your neck may or may not adjust while we're doing neck stretches. But we're not doing any abrupt movements to adjust your neck. I'll send you to a chiropractor for that. That's what they do all day. They're great at it, the good ones. If you see me first, the likelihood of injury goes way down because we reduce the tensile profile of the joints. So the muscles aren't so tight crossing the joint. We've elongated them, and you're not going to tear them off a bone or break a bone when the tendon pulls part of the bone off as they go to abruptly adjust your position. So if you do yoga first, your likelihood of injury at chiropractic is very low.
This is all very interesting. Mike, when we get back, like, comment, and subscribe. We'll continue the conversation. It's very informative, and I may have gotten a few ideas to do at home here. Please like, comment, and subscribe. We'll be right back.
So we're back here at Happy Hour Holidays. Make sure you comment, like, and subscribe, and check out our Instagram and Facebook pages. We're here with Mike Pangburn. He has done a lot of work with a lot of professional athletes, a ton of people, the elderly, to help them live a healthier life and be able to function better. And, you know, I've always thought, because I've had knee pain my entire life, sometimes with the elements, depending on the environment, if it's a rainy day, if it's a cold day, I feel a little bit more pain. Why is that, Mike, sometimes?
So our soft tissues are highly reactive to the environment. To say exactly what it is for any one person is hard to pinpoint, but I go through a lot of pain myself. And when we go from hot, humid weather to much cooler overnight lows and drier air is when I get hit the hardest. All my muscles tighten up, not really all of them, maybe all of them, but the ones that make a difference definitely do. And they swell because of the changes in atmospheric pressure, as well as humidity and temperature. So when you have very hot, humid air, it's denser because there's more water in the air, right? And warm is always good for muscles. So you always warm a muscle up, or I use hydroculator packs, which are moist heat units that I have people lay on to moisten and heat the muscles before we work on the ones that are really problematic to help get them to respond better to stretching and massage type stimulus, or rolling with a lacrosse ball or a foam roller. And it flushes the fluid better once it's warm. So I think with the cold in particular, muscles tend to tighten just from the changes in the atmosphere.
Is there a difference between dry and humid, whether it would be warm as opposed to cold?
I've been told that I think you feel the air's much drier when it's cold naturally, right?
But like, let's say if you go to Arizona where it's a dry heat,
Sure.
as
I've been told
opposed
that's
to
better
Florida.
because there's less changes in humidity that affect people. So a lot of the seniors I've talked to that have lived in both places, or drier parts of Texas, Utah, desert environments that are also generally warm in summertime, that they tend to do a lot better than they do in Florida. Now, in Florida in summertime, it's hot and humid,
Yeah.
but we have a tremendous amount of strong storms usually.
Yeah.
And I get a lot of people who come in, and on those stormy days, they're all swole up. Is it harder to explain? Maybe, just because I don't go through that. I don't feel that pain.
Yeah.
So it's harder for me to sit down and identify what the likely causes are. But I mean, changes in pressure have got to be it.
So apparently humidity has a huge factor in how your muscles feel. You say you swell up when it's a higher humid area, correct?
Well, I think you're going to be more prone to swelling because of the changes in humidity when you're someplace like here, where we go from relatively very high humidity. Most of the average summers, our humidity is over 90%.
Yeah, and it
all day.
sucks.
You feel like you have to chew the air. And then all of a sudden you get a storm that comes through, and then the humidity is 30%. And when you have that big swing, I think people are more affected by it. Whereas somewhere like Arizona or more of an arid desert environment, you're not going to get as big a swings in humidity as frequently. So I think it's the change that stimulates the change.
Wow, that's great. And what are the common causes of chronic pain, and how do you kind of diagnose it when somebody comes in and it's a new patient? How do you go about the whole situation?
That's a great question. So first I ask them about what they're going through. And when they explain to me what hurts, how it hurts, what it feels like, what movements they can and can't do, those are all hints. My brain's racking about what muscles surround that joint, what's limiting the range of motion, if there is any range of motion limitations, which there almost always is. And then trying to figure out the best way to correct the tensile profile of the joint to alleviate the muscular imbalance that's causing the problems. So if you have an injury, like let's say you tear your ACL in childhood and it gets surgically repaired, you go to physical therapy. It doesn't mean when you left physical therapy, just because you don't have as much pain and you can walk again, it doesn't mean that the joint's right. It's not perfect. And even if it is, it may not stay that way. Soft tissue always changes. Length, strength, there's a lot of variables that go into it.
Can you define soft tissue for everybody?
Sure. So soft tissues are everything in your body that is
Skin,
not bone. So
tendon, cartilage,
right,
muscle.
tendons, cartilage, muscle. I mean, organs would technically be soft tissues, but I don't really work directly with most organs outside the skin and the musculature.
Okay.
So, yeah, I mean, I think that's the big difference between soft tissue and hard tissue. Hard tissue is your bones, right? Teeth, stuff like that.
Damn, I interrupted what you were saying, though. I did.
Motherfucker. Hey, so how does...
You talk about figuring out.
Yeah.
So after I learned that stuff from you, then I palpate the area, which means palpation is learning by feel. And a soft muscle, a healthy muscle, is generally soft, right? It's spongy when you poke on it. It doesn't hurt the person to poke on soft, healthy, soft tissue. When a muscle locks up or has a knot in it, and it won't fully elongate because the contractile units are bound up and held that way because of stored lactic and carbonic acid, then you poke on it, it's denser, and there's a lot of pain. Well, if you have a knot in your piriformis muscle, it's going to push on your sciatic nerve. You're going to get sharp shooting pain running down your leg, probably a little bit of numbness at times. It'll come, it'll go. And once we do the corrective strengthening and stretching and soft tissue release movements that we need to do to correct the tensile profile, all that stuff goes away.
Oh, where did you learn all this? Because I know you didn't learn it in
Hard Knocks.
Because you definitely didn't learn it in college.
No, I had phenomenal teachers, not just in college,
like mentors.
Mentors, absolutely. So, like when I did my first bodybuilding show, a guy named Al Wolk in Virginia Beach got me ready for it. He's a legendary coach and personal trainer up that way. And he had a master's degree in biomechanics that he used to fix his shoulders when he blew both shoulders out bench pressing 550 pounds.
Jesus.
So what Al effectively taught me was how to isolate muscles through better biomechanics. Once I learned that from him in terms of how to use it for human performance, I moved to Newport Richie a few years later. And then I integrated that into rehabilitating joints, and it made an enormous difference. So the teachers help. I learned yoga from a guy that went to prison for 18 years and learned yoga on the concrete floors from a guy that learned it from a monk that was in his gang, and they called it combat readiness preparation.
Oh, wow.
And he said, you didn't care, you didn't have a matter how bad it hurt, because you never knew where you were going to get a shank from, and you always had to be ready to get out of the way. and it, after doing it, and learning to do his style yoga, which I've extrapolated on since, I really have never had plantar fasciitis or sciatica pain ever again in my life. Which were chronic problems for me before that. I spent about 8 years unable to go to work, missing 6 to 8 weeks of work a year because of a T11 break in my spine.
Was that from the car accident?
Undiagnosed. No, I think most likely I broke it squatting 455 pounds.
That'll do it.
When I was 23, but I'm not sure. It didn't show up on x-rays. They found it when I got hit by the truck and did dye contrast CTs and all the other more intense imaging.
What is the purpose of lifting weight heavier than your body weight? Is there any purpose whatsoever, or is that just putting strain on the human body?
It depends on what you're trying to accomplish, right? For me at the time, I was bodybuilding competitively. So I had 27-inch thighs, and the law of exercise science suggests through progressive overload that over time we have to work the muscles more intensely to continue to elicit a response or a growth stimulus. That if you did the same exercise forever and never changed the intensity or varied the stimulus or working the same muscle a different way, eventually you would just maintain where you're at and hit a plateau and stop getting better.
What if you increase the amount of repetitions you
That's
did?
another technique for sure, and I'm a big fan. I also like increasing neurological stimulation through implementing instability-based resistance training. I wasn't as familiar with that at that point in my career as I am now.
That's like
16
doing the
years ago.
one-handed push-up on a
Gymnastic ring with
Yeah,
one
yeah.
foot on the ground, or standing on a bowling ball doing 20
yeah.
squats in a row, or standing on 2 Bosu balls and deadlifting 300 pounds, or doing clean and jerks on 2 Bosu balls, or a Bosu ball under one foot and a medicine ball under the other, and doing overhead presses with a PVC pipe with end caps that's half full of water. So then you've got more instability.
Doesn't that also lead to more ability or more risk of injury?
It does. So you have to understand how to implement these movements safely, which is something that I really train my staff very intricately how to do. Also, how to spot the movements to keep people safe when they're appropriate. But, in 2009, I was blessed. I had the ability to start a senior balance training program, and I researched all the aspects that I could that went into balance that we could affect with exercise science. And by the grace of God, 12 weeks later, I had a room full of senior citizens that used to need canes and walkers standing on medicine balls doing consecutive squats unassisted without really any risk of fall anymore.
Oh, wow. So it actually does work.
It works
as long as
tremendously.
it's implemented correctly with risk mitigated.
I've never had an injury from a fall trying to train seniors to do medicine
Is
ball
that
squats.
something that maybe you find a little bit, I guess the word I'm looking for here, fuck, man, for your business, having and training senior citizens, do you ever feel like that's a little bit high insurance, like if your insurance goes higher because their risk of injury is higher? Yeah.
I've never really worried too much about it because I don't really have a lot of lawsuit problems. I've never really had that issue.
You said a
luckily,
lot. It means you have had some?
No.
okay.
In fact, it's just not an issue I have. My biggest competitor when I was a gym owner in Newport Richey actually called me and bought my member base when I was closing the gym. She told me the only reason she would be if I would sign a non-compete that says I would never work against them in Pasco County for one of their competitors.
You told them no, I hope.
No, I don't plan on working in Pasco County. I moved to Tampa. And,
so he said, yeah.
But she told me at the time,
move.
she was friends with Dr. Bain, the pediatrician I started the children's fitness weight loss program with. And she said that, she'd been trying to recruit me to work for her for years. And she told me that in her entire career, watching trainers and owning a chain of gyms, she never had a trainer that went a decade without injuring an adult. She goes, I think it's unbelievable that you are training and overseeing the training of 200 plus children starting at 5 years old. And in 6.5 years, you never had a significant injury.
There's a common, I don't know, maybe it's a misconception or not, but I hear that weight training and strength training when you're at a young age, and when I say young, maybe like 10, 11, can stunt growth. Is that something that's a misconception, or is that truth?
I think that's absolutely a lie. That's 100% baloney. Now, reality is most adults don't know how to safely implement a strength training program, particularly with weights, with their children. Now, if you approach it as a parent and you look up the American College of Sports Medicine's guidelines for safe resistance training for children, and you actually do it with them and spot them to ensure they stay safe, I don't think there's a high likelihood of injury at all.
Well, not injury, just stunting their growth.
You won't stunt their growth. The only way you're going to stunt their growth is through damaging the growth plates in the bones, which is not going to happen from any reasonable resistance training program that abides by the American College of Sports Medicine's guidelines.
What is the main tip that you can give to parents that maybe want to strength train their children for, say, football? Should they be lifting weights heavier than they are, or should they just be lifting 5-pound dumbbells?
So before they're 15 years old, I wouldn't have them lifting weights a lot heavier than they are in particular. Now, I think there's a lot better things you could do to build them as an athlete than lift weights, as well as improve their strength.
Like?
Plyometrics are definitely a great eccentric way to build strength and size in children. Instability-based resistance training, NASA proved, causes an increased rate of production and release of growth hormone from the anterior pituitary. They call it variable resistance training because they use it with their astronauts because there's no gravity in space. So you can't lift weights because the weights would float around. So you're using rubber bands and things that have a variable form of resistance. Not only do I use a lot of rubber bands, a medicine ball you're standing on or doing push-ups on is a variable form of resistance because of the instability. So when that ball moves, your rotator cuff muscles have to do more work to stabilize it. Your core works, your multifidus, one of the muscles that stabilizes and rotates a part of your spine, has to tighten. The metabolic activity is much greater doing functional movements like that in an unstable way to improve performance in children.
Mike, can you leave our audience with what we like to call your final words, your last thoughts, something that you want to share with the audience? Maybe they didn't know. It could be a piece of motivation. It could be instruction. It could be anything. What do you want to leave our audience with?
Well, I think it's important for your audience to understand that a lot of health problems are in your control, that you should question your doctors all the time. You should read every medication and all the side effects that are published for it on the label. I would recommend checking it out at pubmed.gov as well, because there's a lot of side effects that are not listed. And I think drinking water and stretching every day will absolutely change your life if you're religious about it.
Is PubMed something that the audience would understand, the medical terminology that they're using in those publications?
Probably not, but we all have dictionaries, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Most of us have friends that are nurses and doctors that we can ask. That's what I had to do a lot of in the beginning, was looking up terminology. I was blessed to train a lot of doctors so I could talk to them about concepts and ideas and really gain a lot more understanding. Still, sometimes I have to. I don't never run into medical terminology that I'm not familiar with. I mean, that definitely does happen from time to time.
Yeah, we absolutely got a minute, 30 seconds.
Well, we really appreciate you coming on, Mike. It's been absolutely awesome. I mean, always like sports and all that stuff, so this was fantastic. And if you're looking to connect with Mike, he's got Pangburn Methods, as well as you can go to moverightagain.com. You also have his Instagram and Facebook, Pangburn Methods. Facebook is Pangburn Methods P3. His location is off of North Florida. You can check him out. He's got 100+ 5-star reviews on Google. So this guy is legit. And if you're looking for something as an alternative to what the doctors are telling you as far as physical therapy, you should check out Mike and his website and everything else that he offers on his Instagram. We really appreciate having you on, Mike. It's been awesome. And like, comment, and subscribe. We really appreciate you out there on the audience. If you want to participate and be somebody that we interview here on our podcast, please reach out to us and we'll get you in.
And also check us out on Spotify, check us out on Apple Podcasts, all your major platforms. We are on there. If you can't watch, you could definitely listen.
Do something better than you did yesterday. Thanks. And we out. Peace.